Now, if you don't...
I have never heard of Sinder until this controversy.
Her apology was one of the worst I've seen in recent memory.
It's just business. Fuck your business! These people were not just business! They were friends who had your back! You f***ing snake! I hope you're happy! I hope you're f***ing...
The fuck was that guy crashing out about? This is, like, I'm sorry, bro, but, like, I get it, but, like, you need to, like, turn it down a bit. I don't know her. Oh, fuck, I was like, finally.
Yeah, I know. Many of you are still reeling from the Gurra Gurra graduation. I'm sorry, I just reminded you of a sick event, but wipe those tears. But those probably used cum tissues you have on that desk. Because you're not in this alone. Because this year has been terrible for VTubing fans. And I know, I'm a bit late to this one, but I wanted to wait till the dust had somewhat settled. And as we all know, I love to talk about subjects that have long since fossilized, of which I suddenly remember when dropping a fibre-filled viscous extremity into the toilet and make a video on it. Good luck with your appetite if you're eating whilst watching. I have warned you multiple times in the past. But this is probably the newest topic I wanted to talk about recently, and something that indirectly hit me with a splash damage when it surfaced, as I had previously made another video about a VTuber that was perceived by many to be the most hated VTuber, and I basically went over why they may be viewed that way, and their history, only for as soon as that video went live, I basically had my ass ran through, and that video was immediately labelled outdated, as I basically prematurely ejaculated because another VTuber was about to have a crusade launched against her due to her own actions. And it was everywhere, it was talked about non-stop, she was even in that video I made. And I didn't even know, I just typed in VTuber to use as background footage before this even happened, and there it was like a little voodoo curse. But all of this was about the VTuber Sinder, who I must clarify does own a part of Gamersubs, and I do have an active partnership with them, so I might be more cooked than the remains of people at Pompeii, who knows, we'll see. But this is an event that rocked the VTubing community to its core, affected many VTubers themselves and their careers, and the main...
That was like one of the sad ones. One of the sad ones, because, like, if I was correct, it wasn't the jaw surgery or some other thing, it was like a surgical procedure. And many others were affected, like Shy Lily... freaking who else? I think some artist. I haven't it's been a while since I tackled it. Like, very much.
And it involves is still radio silent to this day, and for good reason, as the things that occurred would certainly be hard to come back from, especially in the core of public opinion. This situation also involves a lot of document reading, which I saw a meme about on Instagram Reels, which totally didn't remind me about this whole situation.
They want to make an apology? Google Docky!
But before we get anywhere near the situation, we need to first know who Sinder is and her history.
She was like Tosh.
People love watching VTubers.
She started off as a VTuber by the name of Toshi.mp3 and used to make GFE ASMR videos.
I think it's like people just like watching cute anime girls.
Sinder is a VTuber that before all of this was actually one of the most popular indie VTubers, to the point where at the convention WeebCon, yes it does exist, I was just as surprised as you, she had a meet and greet where there were so many people they had a line for the line to meet at, and she had a concert where...
I have to bully royalty here. I hate to fucking do this, buddy. But you have to understand. You're gonna have to understand. She started off not as a VTuber. Not as a VTuber. Fucking hurry up. I hate this thing. Fucking, I hate the Wi-Fi. Toshi? Yeah, Toshi.mp3. Yeah, she started off as this channel called Toshi.mp3, where she would make ASMR videos. Don't care. So, I understand why his origins, but the origins is highly wrong. That's where she started off as. Why is the video not playing?
People were losing their shit, and one guy was recording with a DS for some reason. It actually surprised me that she is a VTuber that has done a sort of face reveal, and we actually got to see her IRL 3D model, but said excitement that surrounded her due to recent controversy has turned against her. But before any of this, Sinder had somewhat humble beginnings. Although the Sinder account on Twitch, YouTube and Twitter was made in 2020, before that she was known under a very different name, a name she was well known for, Tashi.mp3. Her content around that time was
I corrected him for no reason.
primarily ASMR content that most of you can't relate to, and probably bought into your delusions, like a date with your tsundere girlfriend, and I love you and I wish I could be your girlfriend. Or even more unrealistic, your new girlfriend makes out with you after skipping class. I personally don't watch ASMR. I personally just listen to white noise before I go to sleep. But I'm about to get really personal with you and share one of my favourite ASMRs.
Good. Okay. Are you ready?
No.
Sweet dreams, baby.
Ah, so soothing. She also apparently had one of those mics that are really expensive and makes it feel like they're entering your ear canal when they're speaking. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're wearing headphones right now, you're about to get very uncomfortable, and it's basically like this. And for those of you not wearing headphones, you just didn't feel anything at all there. According to Sinder herself, she only actually started uploading this content after finding it, thinking it was cringe but thought she could do that, but wasn't completely sold on the idea until she opened a fortune cookie, telling her to go ahead with it.
I opened up my fortune cookie.
Oh.
My fortune said, ideas you may think
I fucking forgot about that. Yeah, she opened a fortune cookie and created this channel.
are stupid ultimately lead to success. And I was like, this is a sign.
So probably next time you get a fortune cookie, follow it. It's not like she was trying to hide her past of doing ASMR or her past character. She actually still made these type of videos after changing to Sinder, and it was listed under her official channel as her ASMR content, and was even mentioned in one of her recent music videos, Smoke and Mirrors, which was launched a few weeks before her controversy, and came off as just ultimately ironic. But we first saw the mention of Sinder in 2020, when she created all these social media accounts, and later started streaming in 2021, and was able to carry her audience from her ASMR content and Twitter to watch her stream pretty regularly. But the Tashi phase of Sinder's career, although it was mainly ASMR, it was not to be underestimated. This gave her a start with her audience and gave her a foot in the door for her next stage in content, which was being a VTuber. But being a VTuber isn't that easy. Unless you want to make your VTuber model and art yourself, you may have to invest a lot of money to make your first VTuber model. And especially as an indie VTuber, you would need an audience to prove that money was worth investing. Unless you just want to gamble it and blind run it, I guess. But in 2021, Sinder had already made moves towards her goal of becoming a VTuber. She had already rebranded under the new name and began posting teasers and artwork of her character. But she did come across some difficulties, especially with getting her VTuber model. But even with this difficulty, she was still growing her audience and still streamed regularly with a placeholder for her VTubing model until her eventual official debut in July of 2022. The avatar that was presented in her first debut, the model was created by a creator called Nanoless, someone that would go on to create a lot of the models of most of the popular VTubers, and someone that would be involved later in the controversy Sinder faced. but the debut went pretty well, and it was probably down to Cinder's efforts building her audience previously, and the massive calcium cannons attached to her avatar. The modelling of those probably took a terabyte each. It was a lot of the models of most of the popular VTubers, and someone that would be with a placeholder for her VTubing model until her eventual official debut in July of 2022. The avatar that was presented in her first debut, the model was created by a creator called Nanolis, someone that would go on to create a lot of the models of most of the popular VTubers, and someone that would be involved later in the controversy Cinder faced. But the debut went pretty well, and it was probably down to Cinder's efforts building her audience previously, and the massive calcium cannons attached to her avatar. The modelling of those probably took a terabyte each. The debut stream peaked at 988 viewers, and 2 days later she would hit 10,000 followers on Twitch, and would finish that year with an average concurrent viewership of 1,000 viewers per Twitch stream, which is really good, and places her in the top 1% of Twitch. This growth would continue across all of her platforms in 2023. She hit 100,000 subscribers on her main YouTube channel. People began seeing her regularly collaborating with other VTubers, to the point where they supposedly had their own name, Girly Pops. This included other VTubers like Numi, Bao, Yuzu, Vienna, and Tricky. But at this point she was integrated within the VTuber community, and her fire...
So she had a little friend group called Girly Pop, okay? So, basically, the apology for correction, but basically, ASMR transitioned into Hellhound VTuber thing. And after that, if I'm correct, gained really popular. Artist Nanolis, freaking, how would you say it? Fucking Nanolis, made popular VTuber, made model. Obviously, I know a lot about the drama, so I'm not going to spoil anything.
Pups, the label she used for her supporters and fans, were growing day by day, and by the end of 2023 she was averaging 2,000 viewers on Twitch. She released her 2.0 model, also created by Nanolis, much to her community's delight, and once again, there was probably enough booba there to feed the entirety of Yemen and swallow up most people's GPU usage. She returned to ASMR every now and again on her main channel, showing she had not completely turned her back on her past, but uploads under her Tashi persona would seemingly cease around this time.
Oh my
2024 was the same as usual, more growth, and she was averaging almost 3,000 concurrent viewers, something that probably assisted in her becoming a partial owner of Gamersubs along with her friend at the time, Shy Lily. And she also started showing up at VTuber convention panels along with other VTubing talent. But it's important to note that Cinder had a fairly clean reputation prior to her latest controversy. The only thing closest to controversy was with the whole Twitch thing, where some VTubers were unfairly banned to their appearance on stream, but in other areas of Twitch you can basically see softcore porn. But VTubers were being banned for seemingly the same appearance. Yeah, VTubers still somewhat have a 12-inch hate bone over Twitch over that. But until 2025, her record was somewhat clean, not a smear in sight, which is probably why when all of this was brought to light, many of her audience couldn't believe the person they supported for so long was capable of the things levied against her, with many people coming...
Yeah, I even feel bad, and I didn't watch Cinder that much. I watched as Tachi.mp3. It's really crazy to see that. And not just beyond insane, actually. It's kind of like the biggest thing in the VTuber community. Since, like, for me, the Nux and V Shoujo drama.
Out with similar stories. But what happened?
That is fucking disgusting.
With content nowadays, especially within the streaming environment, Many content creators have an online persona, many of which their viewers resonate with, only for most of said viewers to be severely disappointed when they learn the person they were watching for years isn't exactly like they were on camera or when they were streaming, which is normal. Most people will never be in melee range of their favourite content creators. But this relates very much to the Sinder situation, as the viewers of Sinder would never have expected what was occurring behind the scenes, and her supposed friends would react the same way. On April 26, 2025, a document dropped from the artist Nanolus, that if you don't remember, we mentioned it like a few minutes ago, you dumbass. She was the person behind the creation of Cinder's VTuber avatar, and so many others within the VTubing space, some of which Sinder was friends with, but this document was Nanolus announcing she would no longer work with Sinder due to her and her manager's behaviour towards her and others. This
Yeah, the manager redacted.
once again would inspire other people.
That's actually that they were called online redacted. And yeah, I also have to clarify, because this, if they're going to touch over it, I don't know if they would, but one of the earliest dramas we discovered, this is back in the Tashi.mp3 shit. She cheated on her manager slash boyfriend, redacted, with another man.
People to come out with their own documents talking about their experiences with Sinder and her manager, which altogether is a lengthy read and probably rivals the King James Bible in terms of pages at this point. But from all the information that was put out there, it was proven that the manager named Redacted was in fact her boyfriend. I know some of you refugees from the Gunpie community are reliving your own D-Day again, and some of her fans were probably shocked to hear this as well. Some of them probably throwing away their mouse pads with a little wrist support on it that had the exact measurements of our VTubers' areolas. But once again, that one tweet about VTubers having boyfriends was proving correct again. But why is this important? Well, in the Nanolus document and many others, they suggest both her and the manager were working in unison, and they were fully aware of each other's actions, which is important because a lot of the actions spoken about involve really aggressive business tactics, which people would understand in a business environment.
Yeah, no, it's as sparked as a meme. It was just business. Anytime like Cinder pops up, it's just business.
And possibly in the streaming environment if those business tactics were not being used against her own supposed friends. Going back to the Nanolus document, it is actually fairly short, around 18 pages, most of those pages including Discord screenshots between Sinder, the manager, and Nanolus, from 2023 to 2025. Having read the document, it talks about multiple things, but the main point of it is that Redacted, the manager, was trying to push the model creator, Nanolus, to only work with Sinder and blacklist other creators such as Bao, Cottontail, and Silverveil. Once again, some of these people were supposed friends of Sinder, and outside of the blacklisting, they also affected VTubing models for Bao and Silverveil that Nanolus was working on. Around this time, Bao had expressed in a group chat.
Yeah, basically, this basically was a. I'm not correct. I'm not a boy. I don't know how to describe it, but it's basically was like. How would you describe it? Freaking, I think, I don't know how to describe it, but basically, any of these two people, like Bauer, Silverveil, would freaking try to commission it. She cannot, and they'll just give more work to Sinder.
With Sinder, how upset she was this got cancelled, and Sinder said nothing, and Silver later shared she'd never really spoken to Sinder except for a meet and greet, and cancelling collaborations that Sinder kept inviting her to twice in 2023, and she also brings up a screenshot of her bringing up Nano after trying to cancel their model at the same time. Back to the negotiations, they offer to pay her and give her a lot of work to cover these blacklisted creators if they ask for art, and all she has to do is say no and they will hire her for a new job to replace that money. They also stated when trying to push for an exclusivity deal that the more avatars this artist creates, the less unique they become. They use this line a lot over the span of 2 years, by the way. It's a weird point. They even clarify all of their creations are unique. It's not a volatile stock, bud. They also go as far to slander other creators in these messages, like saying Bao had stolen their editor and supposedly locked them up because her music video did better than Bao's, and that Bao is good at emotionally manipulating people, which Bao proves wrong in her document, and the editor comes out to talk about it as well. They mentioned Shy Lily, another VTuber that was associated with them, going on to say she's been acting weird, like ghosting her messages, and when Sinder apparently raided her on Twitch, she didn't recognize her by name.
Oh my goodness! Hello! Oh! Hello, raiders! Hello!
And they were just trying to get information about Lily from Nanolus. They also referred to another VTuber copying Sinder, who was Spite, with similar designs. They talked about Silvervale again.
If I'm correct with with that VTuber copying allegations, it was fucking Sinder who copied the other one. So it was the other way around. I hate this.
Saying they had also copied them due to them advertising their figurines on the same day. But Nanolus would reach out to Sinder back in 2023 trying to verify one of the things Redacted was saying, where the infamous line, "It's just business," comes from.
Yep.
Which many thought, you know, these are your friends, it's not just business. But in my personal opinion, I think she was just trying to reassure Nano she is free to do whatever she wants. And then again 2 years later, they would talk again about not taking the exclusivity deal, and Sinder vents her frustration about being compared to Silvervale a lot. So what this basically boils down to is Redacted, and by association Sinder. They wanted this artist to just be doing work for them, and tried pressuring the artist into said deal in an attempt to somewhat control their output, and to not work for people Sinder was supposedly friends with, and in some cases to drop work being done for others, and also slandered and talked poorly about other VTubers, which potentially impacts their own business and careers, and is essentially backstabbing your friends for your own gain. This affected a lot of people across the VTuber community, but mainly people that were associated with Sinder. Each person made their own document sharing their experiences with Sinder and showing proof that some of her claims were false, and some coming forward saying they were the people talked about in some of these screenshots. One document released showing that when Sinder was Tashi.mp3, she had intimately messaged another person and cheated on Redacted.
Yeah, that actually happened. Oh, I fucking hate this thing.
Which the document made the person writing it and Sinder just look bad, but admittedly they eventually did cut it off. But it was clear from this point Sinder was not to be trusted. She was highly competitive and business oriented, even with friends. She would eventually release her own document apologising, which also didn't do too well. It was quite literally spawn camped out the gate, and the VTuber Shy Lily, who is involved in this, and doesn't get that involved with VTuber drama and is seen to be this wholesome VTuber. But in this situation, she popped her ult and made Sinder bite the keb basically, along with many other VTubers. But in Cinder's apology, she admits Red was her partner, and that she previously did cheat on him, but they fixed that in their relationship, and then says he was very business orientated, and that she didn't know a lot of the things he was doing, including the messages with Nano, and that Redacted was no longer her manager. A lot of people just saw this as her throwing her boyfriend under the bus, and claiming complete
because it was completely
naivety about all the things that were happening, which people didn't believe. She apologises to Nana for putting her through this, but says that she never meant to pressure her, but she can see why she saw it that way. Not the best apology when people are saying you tried to manipulate somebody. She apologised to Bao, saying she should have never treated her friends like competition, and that she should have known Red was talking bad about her. She apologises to Cotton and Lily for dragging them into this, and that once again she did not know that Redacted was trying to exclude them, and that she had just learned about this herself, which people also didn't believe. She apologises to Silvervale, who everyone supposedly compared her to, and that she was being eaten alive by harassment relating to this.
Oh, wow. She's really Shiv a person. Like, legitimately.
but she was wrong for letting this get to her. She apologizes to Spite, Peaches, and apologized to her own audience, the Pyropups, and the VTubing community in general, which basically nobody accepted, and to this day she has not been forgiven. Her reputation is basically liquid diarrhea at this point. She built her career up for multiple years just for this to completely destroy it in seemingly a week. But to be fair, even a month after this happened, things have died down. I wouldn't say people have moved on from it due to the fact it affected so many people, but it isn't as talked about as much as it was initially. Some people have written this situation off as just high school level drama, which I do disagree with due to the fact this has affected people's careers and own business, but that's just me, I guess.
The sentiment is very much high school drama, but the issue is that it doesn't have the effects of it. It was pretty much like a big deal.
I'm tired, boss.
Now, even with all the allegations in the air regarding Sinder and a good percentage of her own audience showing outrage and expressing their disappointment to the point where they have begun discarding and throwing away merchandise, however, some have tried to—
You're gonna be kidding me, they're burning them? What the hell? It's like, fuck you, Sinder. Piece of shite. They're just burning the merch like, yeah, fuck you. Okay, it's the 3 times.
Fight back in Cinder's absence, some going after other creators like Shy Lily, bringing up her past and saying she is just as worse as Sinder, and some are patiently waiting for Sinder to return. But I was curious why Sinder fans are still holding on.
Wait, what?
Her past, where they have begun discarding and throwing away
Yeah, that's the funny thing.
However, some have tried to fight back in Cinder's absence, some going after other creators like Shy Lily, bringing up her past.
Well, you could also consider this. Shy Lily has admitted to setting up the Nano and Bao dock. She admitted to data explosion, and when she said on stream that she installed a keylogger on an ex's PC. We know Nano broke data protection laws. Wait, what? Hey, what? I'm so confused. What the fuck? So you're saying Shy Lily admitted to setting up the Nano and Bao docks. She admitted to data explosion when that she installed a keylogger onto an ex's PC. We know Nano broke data protection laws in Brazil. How did Shy Lily get this info from Nano?
And saying she is just as worse as Sinder, and some are.
If Sinder has lost 1 million fans, I'm one of them.
Patiently waiting for Sinder to return. But I was curious why Sinder fans are still holding on. You know, are they just crazy? There are so many documents recording what Sinder had done. Why are they still defending her? And I found one of her fans that are still defending her and waiting for her to come back. And to be honest, I went in thinking they were crazy, even though in the title it literally says they are biased, but I gave it a shot, and it wasn't that bad. And the video uses a document by Powder, another VTuber that was not involved in the situation whatsoever. They compiled most of the documents and made a timeline, and from that document it is a very different perspective on the whole situation. They also add their own opinion in there at times, and add clips to show their reasoning. They also take some of the emotional aspects out of the situation and judge it purely based on what happened, and this is what some existing Sinder fans are using to defend her, and I thought it would be interesting to look at the Sinder situation from a different perspective. They start off by saying that before Nanolis dropped her document, she had shown some of the things being said about Shy Lily and other people to Shy Lily herself. This is apparently what started all of the documents, and they use this clip to evidence that, taken from Shy Lily after the situation, talking about it.
Talked to Nano and I was like, Nano, I'm gonna be honest, some of the stuff you have here is heartbreaking. I'm thankful for you showing this to me, but I highly encourage you to share this with the people affected, especially Bao, because, you know, that one nasty one where she sabotages Bao, especially that one. And Nano, the fucking Giga chat she is, agreed. She agreed.
Okay.
So we made a group chat.
From there, Bao was then informed about the situation and provided the same screenshots. And then all of them were in a group trying to discuss how they would bring this to light. And it says in the document they went through all the possible solutions and decided to make a Google Doc. The evidence is of Bao's stream going over it, where she is very upset, and she mentions going over all the possible solutions.
I thought of every possible solution on what to do next. And we were really scared, like...
There is then a claim in the document that Bao was told many times to include private information about Sinder being in a relationship.
So the entire argument for Sinder fans is that... that they just maliciously planned this out.
But Bao didn't want to do that.
You do not know how many times I was told to put in my Google Doc the fact that you had a significant other, and no matter how many people told me to put it in, and how stupid I would be to not put it in, I could not bring myself to put it in, because I knew that what that would do to your reputation, and you could not spare that same. You could not spare that same thought for me.
And then it makes a claim Bao was put in a position to speak up or no one else would.
I hated, but I had to be in the position.
That she was the martyr that... So she was... So the entire documents, the argument is like, she's the martyr of this. She had to speak up when no one else could. Even if I look at it objectively, you can... The Nano shit's still bad regardless. Like, regardless of how you see it and how you don't see it, it's bad. And not just that, because technically, they try to do an exclusivity deal that really terribly destroyed everything. You can't argue regardless how it is. It's just so bad on so many levels. If you even leave the emotions out of it. If you leave the other stuff, like the cheating thing, could have stayed private. Some other stuff could have stayed private. But...
Where it had to be me to say something.
But at the end of the day, some of the stuff could factually be, how would you say, I guess, private.
Or no one else would.
Then it claims they slept on it for a night and then they eventually did post the document. And it also claims at one point Sinder and Redacted were never contacted privately to resolve this. However, there is a clip where Shy Lily says she has tried this before, but it was unsuccessful, and it was regarding a different situation.
People saying, why didn't you handle this private? We did once. We did. And she's only deflecting and pretending to be apologetic when put on the spot.
And then Nano releases her document, and then Bao 6 minutes later. And then after the documents have dropped, Sinder and Redacted reach out to Nano privately, and Nano just blocks them.
Everything went live, and you know what she's done? The first thing they both did, they messaged Nano, going, Nano, please. You know what that absolute fucking Giga chat did? Her pussy so fat, bro. Blocked. Blocked.
And then the next day, Sinder releases a statement saying she's removing her manager, and then everyone else proceeds to post their documents with their sides, and then this document proceeds to put all screenshots in order, provided from all the documents. But they do add their own opinion at times, like saying, in Nanalis's document she says Redacted asked her to cancel one of her closest friends, Bao, But they made the point that the screenshot provided is not redacted telling her to cancel the model, but asking if she did cancel models, unless there is more evidence that has not been released. It also says there is missing context with the reason behind Silvervale's commission cancellation, and that ultimately it was Nano's responsibility to cancel this. And it also questions why sometimes there is gaps in the time with the screenshots, like when they were talking about the exclusivity deal, and where they were talking about Drama and Lily, which could be conversations about personal information, or just not relevant conversations at all, but there is gaps. Ultimately, this document puts all the events into a different perspective with a timeline. This document did enlighten me about things I didn't know, like people knowing beforehand, and the fact they launched their documents seemingly at the same time. But
I didn't actually realize, if they knew that beforehand, they could have actually dealt with this a lot earlier.
Come to a number of conclusions at the end of the document. Firstly, they reiterate they had no involvement in this whatsoever, but wanted to put this in chronological order for clarification. They personally think the claims do not align with the evidence provided, and they wish people would look at the DMs outside of the emotional commentary. They then talk about Red and Nano's DMs in general, saying the DMs do not support the claims of manipulation, and it is a gross mischaracterization of what was happening in the DMs, and also that from the DMs they were known to talk about both business and personal topics. And these conversations were very casual, and that ultimately Nano had say over her work, and that she had stood up previously to Red and Sinder, and that she previously made tough business decisions.
If she stood up to this beforehand, then why make it beyond the whole let's gang up on Sinder thing?
On her own volition. And once again, there are gaps and a lack of context in some of the DMs that make them question the claims against both Sinder and Red. They then speak about the relationship between Sinder and Red, and they start by saying that you should keep in mind that Redacted was acting as her manager, and it makes sense he would want his client to be prioritised. But probably the most important thing is the question, just because Sinder and Red were in a relationship, does it mean they know everything which each other was doing? It is claimed in a number of documents that
fair point, actually. They probably didn't
on
know
personal
something.
experience with Sinder and Red that they believed they spoke for each other and worked in unison. But there is no hard evidence for this. But with everything available to us now, we cannot 100% definitely say they knew everything each other were saying, unless additional information is released, which they might not be able to due to personal information being involved.
But there is also more receipts! Verifiable receipts that weren't added to the doc, because either there are smaller things that just only really become a problem when added up, or they were a little too private to be shared.
However, as the document says, she did stand by what Red was saying at times. And then they talk about the model cancellations, and that they think the evidence weakly supports the claim that Red had involvement in those cancellations, but Red did want prioritization on Sinder, but also expressed understanding, and he didn't want to make Nano feel like she had to do these things. And once again, there is some missing context around the cancellations, and that there is no evidence as of yet that Redacted explicitly tells her to cancel those models. And if there is evidence of this, why isn't it shown? They then claim at the end of the day the decision to cancel those models was up to Nano, and blaming it all on Redacted shifts that fact. Next they talk about the exclusivity deal, starting off by saying it is completely understandable that those affected by the exclusivity deal would be rightfully upset. But these screenshots were only negotiations, and they think it makes sense that they would push for an exclusivity deal, so their work could...
Okay, so that makes more sense, I guess, in a larger manner.
...be produced faster, but it does affect people Cinder called friends. But they don't think it's sabotage, as Nano charges a lot for her commissions, and these creators pay high prices for them so they can easily find other people to do these commissions. However, if this deal includes cancelling models mid-commission, it is indeed not fair, and they wish they were shown evidence on the final terms Nano stepped back on. But just to interject my own opinion, a lot of creators choose Nanolist because they know she produces high quality work, and some have worked with her previously, for a while, but it puts those creators at a disadvantage as they have to find someone else to trust and trust in their work. That it will...
Yeah, that makes a lot of that makes sense. You trust it's what it is. Like it's like you work with a company and then you work for them for so long, you can easily trust them, but then if this exclusivity deal happens, you're forced to find someone you have a hard time trusting. It just makes logical sense.
Will come out the way they expect, whereas with Nanolis they already trust her and they can put their full faith in her. They then speak about the leaked DMs, saying that Nano had leaked DMs of a client to another client, labeling it as careless and inexcusable. Also, seemingly from a business perspective, it should cause concern for people that work with them in the future, and that she chose to end a business relationship by leaking private DMs and shaming them from a Google Doc, and that when this happens they attempted to reach out to her and she blocked them, and then finishes off by saying she may casually mention these facts to other people she's working with, but leaking DMs is too far. Once again, they are talking from a business perspective here. I think they make a good point here, but it is unknown to me how Nanolis conducts her business. They are somewhat on a personal level with the creators they work with, and it does appear most of them are friends. And we don't know if these people have contracts tied to their work, but in terms of client confidentiality, it does look pretty bad. Then we move on to the section where they claim Shy Lily is the orchestrator of this whole situation. I do see what they did there. Orchestrator. She's a whale. Yeah, good pun, bud. They say it was never claimed how involved Shy Lily was until Bao streamed after the situation and mentioned Shy Lily was the first person the DMs were leaked to. They also go on to say that Shy Lily claimed that she was slandered, but some of the things Red said was true. The dodging collab statement by Red, they claim was true by providing a clip where Shy Lily admits she did dodge one collab due to the dentist or something, and another she dodged because at that point she already knew.
The day after the dentist, I just simply didn't fucking want to. And the other one, yeah, I dodged. Yeah, I did. Okay, yeah. One of them I did. Because at that one, I already knew. And the other one, yes, I dodged. But you know what's weird? The one person that is the reason for me dodging is the one concerned as to why I'm dodging.
They go on to say the other slanderous message was also proven true regarding ghosted messages, where they provide a clip where Shy Lily admits to this.
So anyways, yes, I am guilty of dodging a collab, because I simply didn't fucking feel like it. And yes, I am guilty of ghosting 2 messages where she asked for a collab, which, by the way, she also only does when there is something business related.
But she also does say in the same stream that a lot of the time she isn't good at communicating with over Discord, and she sometimes does ghost people.
Everyone who is in contact with me, anyone who is close, even my viewers, everyone knows I suck at Discord. I'm very distant, I'm very messy, I don't check often, and I'm not very thorough. So, and she knows that too, because it happened last year as well.
And then the final slanderous claim was that Lily didn't acknowledge Sinder directly when they raided her on Twitch.
So, she's like the mastermind of this entire drama, and she caused this for some reason. Like, it's like saying, like, fucking she's rebuilding the Nazis. Like, she's the new Hitler or something.
And they provide the clip I showed you before where she doesn't mention Cinder's name when raided, but she does acknowledge it happened.
Hello, raiders! Hello! The Pyropop raid! Hello, Pyropops! What did you guys do?
But Lily does talk about this later in her stream, saying she does not have to announce your full legal name when you raid her.
First of all, okay, I am petty. I didn't even get a section for myself. I am going to be super petty. Not even a section for myself. For someone that is so upset for me not naming her full fucking government Twitch.tv name, for someone to just put me in a document as Lily when previously referring to me as the other Gamer Subs owner.
They finish this part off by saying it isn't slander if the statements Red made were proven to be true, and then the document goes on to say Shy Lily has previously stated she had a gut feeling against Sinder.
So most people stay back. Usually when you have a gut feeling, in my case anyways, usually when you have a gut feeling, you stay back and you observe. You take distance. I'm a very distant, very in my own lane kind of person to begin with, and how your friends like that friend, and how everything seems peachy. And then you're like, you know what? My gut feeling fucking ass. Shouldn't have trusted it. You know what? Should have trusted it. Long story short, VTuber makes friends in VTuber space. Friends appreciate having a friend. Turns out they were never a friend.
And then they also go on to say Shy Lily has displayed petty behaviour before, using evidence like when she had issues with Sinder claiming she's the Charizard of V-cards.
When she sat there and she tried to make this thing with me and we were doing a collab and she was just like, oh haha, the Charizard on Blastoise V-card doing the oh, like, how dare you sit there and pretend to be some Boggs legendary of something that you didn't create. I trust me, we all cringed, but people sometimes get excited and they do cringe-worthy stuff.
And then another where she insinuates it's okay to ban Cinder's merch, but in the clip provided she does a few seconds later say it's okay to donate merch as well.
But on top of that, again, if you cope by burning your merch, I ain't judging. You cope the way you wanna cope. I cope through memes and making fun of things. That also isn't fucking perfect. But if you have it in you and you can cope with it, try and donate everything you've got.
Then they state that Shy Lily gloats about the Cinder situation in their stream, but compared to Bao, who was very upset, they state Shy Lily was almost pleased with this outcome, but to be fair, at the start of her stream she does clarify with this situation she deals with it differently, using humour, if that adds anything to this claim.
This is going to be my way of coping with this. You're gonna have to just sit through this. You're gonna have to sit through these very distasteful comments.
But they do finish this segment off by saying Shy Lily encouraged Nana to tell other people about these DMs, and says the situation was so urgent she had to involve Bao a few days after her surgery, and that from Cinder's apology she would have never believed her.
All she had to do, you want a good apology for when you fuck up, and money, and greed for even more. The greed was unbearable. Yes, I'm terrible.
What the hell?
Done. Of course I wouldn't fucking believe her. What the fuck? Manipulator? Of course not. Obviously not.
And that she makes claims that aren't supported through DMs, and they wonder what she saw others didn't.
Needlessly to say, more stuff has happened. Needlessly to say. But most of these things don't have receipts. Or the receipts have personal, private stuff attached to it that you just can't share.
Then they move on to Bao, where they believe Bao was pressured into making this document under the impression if she didn't, nobody else would, and was urged to put personal information in there, but it's commendable she didn't. They add her document is very emotional, and claims are not supported by the evidence provided, but finishes with it's understandable why Bao would be so upset, especially with claims Red made like her music video being a flop, including her by name in the exclusivity deal, and misrepresenting why the editor was not working with Red and Cinder going forward. They have a section on Cinder as well, saying her apology was complete dogshit, which it was, and maybe their friend's willingness to go public with this information is a poor reflection on her character, which may be corroborated by all the people coming out with poor experiences with Cinder, like a clip by Silvervale saying she had an artist reach out to them and say similar things have been occurring with them and Cinder.
They told me that she had told them that I hated her and I was this malicious person and that I was so mean and I just hated her so much, like usually conveniently right after doing a project or art piece.
And Shy Lily saying previously that Cinder had thrown her under the bus.
For her to claim she has no knowledge when I know for a fact she does, but I have no proof other than hearsay. It reminded me of that one fact, the one receipt we do have though, where she herself personally throws me under the bus, and I made sure to quote her own words because again that screenshot isn't public.
They also finish by saying they are not up to date with every bad thing Cinder did, and that they think Cinder should keep going and take this as a learning experience. The overall conclusion, yes, we're almost there, no more Google Docies. I personally don't want to look at another doc with Naruto font ever again. It was way too much reading. but they finish off by saying that they think the situation should have never gone public, which is a valid argument. Multiple parties knew about this beforehand, but I think they made this public to try and prevent similar things happening with other artists. Like with the Silvervale clip, she reveals Sinder or her manager was doing the same thing with other artists. And there is the potential claim that they tried to reach out and fix this privately before, with a different situation, but there is no evidence of both. But we still do not know 100% that Sinder and her manager knew everything each other was saying. But yes, she did somewhat acknowledge the exclusivity deal and vent frustrations to Nana about other creators. And the document leaves off with they don't think this was enough to go after someone's career, and it reads as a hit on Sinder by other parties. But ultimately Redacted did vent frustrations and say distasteful things, but these were said in private with confidence, and we can all relate to venting frustrations with a friend. And that is the document. I think it was an alright document. It gives an interesting perspective and a timeline of events, but that is the other side and the contention with the claims made. And thank f*** it is the final document I have to look at.
A new hand touches the beacon.
In conclusion, in a perfect world, this all would have been solved privately, but there are a number of reasons they potentially didn't go about this, many of which I've mentioned. I think a lot of the documents rely on the fact Sinder and Redacted were working in unison to prove a lot of their points against them, but except for knowing about the exclusivity deal, which is backstabbing her friends, and venting her frustrations about other creators to Nana, but in other messages it is not definitively proven she knew everything Red was doing. An additional context is needed at times, but admittedly those around her do corroborate